I sat in my favorite chair, a 9mm pistol gripped tightly in my hand, waiting for them to descend. They were oblivious to my presence, too caught up in the frenzy of their passion. The house was eerily quiet except for the soft rustling of footsteps upstairs. The plan was simple. I'd moved the chair from my room and placed it at the foot of the stairs, ensuring that they wouldn't notice me until they reached the last step. Their actions were so engrossing, so desperate, that they hadn't heard the front door open when I arrived home early from a business trip. The intention was to surprise my wife, Irene, with a vacation, but instead, I found a scene of betrayal waiting for me. I had entered the house to find discarded clothes, men's and women's, scattered on the floor, leading up the stairs and toward the bedroom. The frantic chaos of the mess indicated they had been in a rush to get to the bedroom. My heart pounded as I processed what was unfolding, too stunned to act immediately. While I waited, I called my partner at the law firm, who specialized in criminal cases. I told him what had happened and mentioned that I was about to be released on bail. He promised to meet me at the station and reassured me that I wouldn't end up killing anyone, though I laughed bitterly, telling him I'd try not to. Irene's lover, Jeffrey, had left his pants and wallet in my living room. I rifled through his things, his ID, his credit cards, and pictures of his wife and children. I also found his cell phone, tossed carelessly on the coffee table, suggesting that this wasn't a one-off affair. As I stared at it, I had an impulse. I dialed his home number. The phone rang 3 times before a woman's annoyed voice answered. "Jeffrey, where the hell have you been? You bastard. It's already after midnight, and it's your daughter's birthday. You've broken her heart. If you do this again, I swear I'll divorce you." I let out a slow breath before replying. "I'm sorry to wake you, Mrs. Connor. I didn't realize the time. Jeffrey's a bit preoccupied right now, so I'll relay your message to him later." She demanded, "Who are you? And how did you get his phone?" "My name is Ronald Kelly. I found Jeffrey's phone thrown on my coffee table when I came home early," I said, my voice calm, though my mind raced with anger. "You see, I'm not just Irene's husband. I'm her soon-to-be ex-husband. And it seems, I'm also more than just her husband, too." There was a long pause before she responded, and I could hear the confusion in her voice. What do you mean?" I responded coldly. "Well, as we speak, Jeffrey and Irene are upstairs having fun. I'm not exactly in the mood to confront them yet, though, because I might not hit my target, and I wouldn't want to hurt them both. So I'm waiting for them to finish their little rendezvous and come downstairs for a drink, like they always do." She was silent, and I continued. "I'll give you a call when it's over, and if anything happens to them, I'll make sure you're informed. You might get a call from Irene too, from the hospital." She gasped. "No, I don't want to hear from him again. He's dead to me." I spoke gently. "Think about your children, Mrs. Connor. They'll hate you for depriving them of their father, especially if anything happens to him tonight. I don't think you deserve that kind of burden." She sighed. "Fine, I'll wait for your call," and then disconnected. Meanwhile, Irene lay beside Jeffrey, exhausted but satisfied after their 3rd round of illicit sex. She briefly thought she heard something from downstairs. "Did you hear that, Jeff?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Jeffrey, too wrapped up in his own self-satisfaction, barely registered the sound. "No, I didn't hear anything," he muttered. But then he listened more closely. "Wait, yeah, I think I do hear something, but it's muffled." Irene, concerned, stood up, put on a robe, and moved toward the stairs to check the answering machine. Jeffrey followed behind, completely unaware of the danger awaiting them, still in his naked arrogance. As Irene came down the stairs, she stopped suddenly. Jeffrey, not paying attention, collided with her, nearly sending them both tumbling down the steps. It was then that the light in the living room flicked on, revealing me sitting in the chair, my pistol aimed squarely at them. Irene gasped, and Jeffrey's face drained of color as they both saw the gun in my hand. "Ron." "No," Irene stammered, realizing her life with me was over. Her voice was shaky, full of regret, but it was too late. I stood up slowly, the tension hanging heavy in the air. "Shut up, you stupid bitch," I said coldly. Irene collapsed to the floor, defeated. I turned to Jeffrey, still stunned and speechless. "Well, At least I won't need to buy a new robe, Jeff. Looks like you've made yourself quite at home in my life. Just not in the way you thought. I sat there, the weight of my pistol heavy in my hand, the cold silence of the room thick with anticipation. There was something deeply satisfying in knowing that the betrayal was about to come to a head. For their actions, I knew I'd have to replace the bed, the sheets, even the entire house. A new wife would be necessary too. But in that moment, I couldn't help but feel a dark satisfaction in the idea of bringing it all crashing down. After all, you can't have everything, right, Jeffy boy? Jeffrey, still reeling from the shock of being caught, was already sizing up his escape, but I quickly shot at the railing, stopping him in his tracks. The loud bang echoed through the house, and the splintering wood reminded me that I'd have to replace that too. Don't go yet, Jeffy. We've still got so much to talk about, I said with a twisted calmness, savoring the control. So much to settle. You're going to owe me for this, sleeping with my soon-to-be ex-wife. We need to get this sorted. And there's no time like the present. Turning to Irene, I couldn't suppress the venom in my voice. How long, Irene? How long has this been going on? How many times has he been inside you? Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes wide with fear as she tried to form words. But there was no escaping now. 6 months, she admitted, her voice trembling. We've been doing this behind your back for 6 months. God, it sounds so dirty when you say it like that. I clenched my jaw, feeling a wave of anger flood through me. 6 months. 6 months of deceit, and no condoms, I bet. Tell me, Irene, have you tried to get pregnant? She shook her head, unable to meet my eyes. Turning to Jeffrey, I couldn't keep my voice steady. So, Jeffrey, do I need to get tested for STDs? Or are you going to take responsibility for that too? Or maybe it's not just Irene you've been sleeping with, huh? Tell me, Jeffrey. Be honest. Jeffrey remained silent, clearly uncomfortable, realizing that standing in front of a man with a gun pointed at him was far more real than his previous bravado. Irene, still horrified, seemed to finally grasp the full weight of the situation. Oh God, Ron, I'm so sorry, she stammered, her face pale. I never thought about STDs. But I was on birth control the whole time. I never meant to hurt you. The bitterness in my laugh cut through the tension. What a thoughtful little liar you are. Birth control? How sweet of you to think of that. I stepped closer to her, eyes burning with fury. But here's the thing, Irene. You haven't been my darling for at least 6 months. And as for Jeffrey, I think it's time we talk about what happens next. Irene, too terrified to speak, nodded weakly. But there was no mercy left for her. I turned back to Jeffrey. You, Jeffrey, are going to pay. First, I'm suing you for alienation of affection, leading to my inevitable divorce from this. I gestured to Irene, this thing I used to call my wife. Then, I'm suing your company, the board, your parent company, everyone for failing to uphold moral standards. I could see the shock in his eyes, but I wasn't done yet. But that's not even the best part. While I was waiting for you two to finish, I had a little chat with your wife. You really shouldn't treat your daughter like that, by the way. It was her birthday yesterday, and you skipped it to sleep with my wife. I tossed Jeffrey his cell phone. Here, give her a call. Let her know what kind of man you are. Irene gasped, horrified. Oh no, Ron, you didn't. Oh yes, I did, I replied coolly. Did you bother to tell Jeffrey what I do for a living, Irene? Her eyes widened in confusion, but I didn't give her time to respond. Well, Jeffrey, I'm one of the top 3 divorce attorneys in this state. And guess what? The other 2 work for me. I'll make sure your wife has the best representation in her divorce against you. We won't charge her a dime. Jeffrey, trying to regain some control, turned away and began fumbling for his phone. I wasn't done with him yet. You, Jeffrey, on the other hand, are going to pay in more ways than one. Without warning, I fired, hitting him squarely in the right buttock. He fell to the floor, crying like a child, screaming in pain. You shot me. You shot me, he wailed. I was done with his whining. You're lucky I didn't kill you, I spat. Turning to Irene, I dialed 911 for the police and an ambulance. As I made the call, I turned back to Irene, my voice low and steady. When the ambulance gets here, get the name of the hospital. Make sure you call his wife too. Let her know where he's going, so she can bring the kids to visit him while he recovers. It's the least you can do after ruining their lives. Irene nodded, her face pale and drained of all color. She hurried to find towels to press to Jeffrey's wound, doing what she could to stop the bleeding, while she was still trapped in the nightmare I had created. Later, as I was being led out of the house in handcuffs, the standard procedure for a shooting, I turned to Irene one last time. "Pack your things, Irene. Get out of my house before I come back. We'll divorce under the terms of the prenup. No counseling, no delays. If you try, I'll destroy you." I paused, making sure she understood. "And before you leave, don't forget to change the sheets on my bed and clean up after yourself. And after Jeffrey boy. I don't want to see any evidence of what you did when I get home. It's bad enough that you slept with him, but in my house and in our bed." I looked at her one final time, seeing the broken woman she had become. "Do you hate me that much, Irene?" She didn't answer, her head hung low in shame. And for the first time in a long while I knew the truth. I wasn't just walking away from a marriage. I was walking away from everything she had once been. The betrayal had killed her. There was no coming back from that.